Hello and welcome back to Assetto Corsa and another video on the Nordschleife challenge. Thank you very much for joining me in today's video. Now, last time out we took the Dodge Viper RT10 from 1995 and that shot to the top of the leaderboard, certainly surprising me in the way that it actually drove. It was very stable. I think the width of the tyres and obviously the geometry of the suspension really helped keep that car planted. This week we are slowing things down a little bit, not massively, but we are slowing things down and returning to a German vehicle. So this will be the third BMW on this particular challenge, and I think is it the sixth German vehicle on the challenge? Fifth or sixth? I think it's the sixth German vehicle on the challenge. We've had two prior BMWs, two Audis and a Porsche. So yeah, this would be the sixth and of course the third BMW. Now this is the BMW 1M M Sport Coupe, or just the 1M Coupe. This was built in, I think, 2011. It's based off the 1 Series, the old 1 Series from 2000 and whatever, and unfortunately it is an old Assetto Corsa model. So one thing that you might notice is a few things look a little bit odd. For example, if you look around the distinctive BMW window style, you can just see there's some weird things with the texture and at the top as well on the roof line and the doors. But that's that. This is a very early Assetto Corsa model. I'd like to see this updated. Anyway, that's all aside. Talking about the car itself, this is a front-engined rear-wheel drive monster. I say monster, maybe not so much of a monster, but certainly it is going to be a handful, and from what I remember it to be, it was a handful a long time ago when I used to drive this many years ago. It has an inline, is it an inline 6? I think it has an inline 6-cylinder engine, 3-litre inline 6 twin turbo, producing 335 brake horsepower at just under 6,000 RPM. I think this can rev up to about 7,000 RPM. I think the power is 5,900, and 369 pound-feet of torque, or 500 Newton meters, between 1.5 and 4,500 RPM. It is all paired. That engine is paired to a manual 6-speed gearbox, so this is going to be really nice to drive. The mass of the car is claimed to be about 1,495 kilos, or in pounds that's what, 3,300 pounds. So 3,300 pounds, give or take a few pounds. And I think this is going to be quite an interesting drive. Of course, tyres, extremely important. You need to know what the tyres are on a vehicle like this, simply because that is what's going to give us our driving capability. Front tyres are 245/35 R19s, rear tyres are 265/35 R19s. As you can see, I've painted this car in sort of a more modern BMW M colour, sort of like a cobalt blue with graphite colour rims, which I think looks absolutely fantastic. 0 to 60 in this car is 4.8 seconds with a top speed of limited 155, but I think if you switch the limiter off, this car can reach about 170 or thereabouts. So up on screen right now is going to be the lap times from last time, and the question is, where is this car going to go on that lap chart? Now, I would expect it to be somewhat slower than the M4, and for a few reasons. I think the M4 has more power. The M4 had the semi-automatic gearbox, the flappy paddles, and I think that the M4 is just a car that could get up to speed a lot faster, just in terms of acceleration as well, better torque. That being said, this car is more agile because it has a shorter wheelbase. It's a smaller car. We should be able to throw this around a little bit more, and it's manual, so we should have better control over the gearing. Though that being said, with the semi-auto, at least you've got the paddles to shift up and down. So I'm not really sure. I think this is going to be slower than an M4, but how much slower, I'm not sure. I would say around RX-7 territory. Could this be vying for 4th place? 4th or 5th place this could be vying for. I'm not too sure where. But as usual, put your thoughts and your lap times in the description box below. If you're not supporting me on Patreon, before we begin, if you want to see the practice laps, go consider supporting me on Patreon. Practice laps will be available on there, and what I'm going to be doing now is doing the practice laps, and in a few seconds you will see me ready for a couple of proper laps of the Nordschleife, and let's see just how fast I can take this desirable, somewhat old, but kind of not very nice looking, in my opinion anyway, BMW. Okay, here we go. Let's see what we can do on this. I've done my practice laps. Hopefully you guys have written your suggestions for your lap time in the comments box. Let me know if you have. In fact, like I said, let me know if you have. Obviously I would have seen. If you haven't, then pop it in right now. Let's see what kind of lap times you think this might be able to do. This car is quite a car to drive. I must admit, this is quite a car to drive, and very easily 3rd gear has become my favourite gear. It's the gear that you can use through a lot of sections. In fact, I think I'm in 3rd right now, and you can really use 3rd through a lot of sections very, very nicely. So it's a good gear to use if you're driving this car. I recommend you get used to 3rd gear. And despite the wide tyres on the rear, this car does like to slide in true BMW fashion, and the manual gearbox just makes it all the better. Now, one thing I am going to mention, another thing I have to mention, is that if this lap time appears a lot slower than one would expect, I do apologise, but I am sporting a shoulder injury at the moment, and I think that is actually affecting my driving at times, particularly fast reactions. It's not easy to do with just one hand, particularly as that hand needs to change gear, and it's the other hand or the other arm that has the injury. So I'm glad that I have the G27, which is a lighter wheel, meaning it's not too bad, but it is certainly causing some problems. I've also made the Sidekick app larger. I don't know whether that's going to help, but let me know if it does, and then I might get rid of that performance delta potentially. I might just keep both, and that way at least you can see the lap times a lot clearer, and speeds and gears and all of that sort of information. So that should help out. In terms of the car, I know I said that I do not like the styling, and I stick by that. And the reason I just do not like the styling, it's that 1 Series styling. I never liked the styling of the 1 Series when it first came out, and I still do not like the 1 Series. The 2 Series, the M2 anyway, that looks beautiful. That basically, if this car, in fact, the M2 with the manual gearbox is everything that this car was destined to become, and obviously the M2 is naturally, I believe, the successor of this sort of car. So I'm very happy that BMW have continued with this tradition. I think a number of people have tested this car against that new M2 with the manual gearbox and said that that new M2 with the manual gearbox actually does beat this car somewhat. It's actually still very close, but this car is really, really good to drive once you get used to it. So I wouldn't be surprised if that new M2 wasn't massively better, but still was better. See, turns like that, just having to try and hold it and move it, that's actually damaging. Yeah, damaging my shoulder, but that's okay. It will be over in a few moments. Don't need to push too hard. Having a manual gearbox in this is just fantastic. Every car should have a manual gearbox option. It does not matter if it's slower. So if this had a paddle, if this had a sequential semi-automatic paddle, whatever it's called, if you had one of those, maybe the 0 to 60 would be 4.6 seconds instead of 4.8. But you know what? That extra 0.2 of a second, it works for this. It doesn't matter. It works for this car. It doesn't matter if it's 0.2 of a second slower. The car is better to drive for it, and that's really what I feel. That's all that matters in a car like this. No, stay straight, stay straight. Okay, I was a little bit slower through there than I wanted to be. There you go. The car is very... I was going to say it's easy to drive. It's not easy to drive, but it's very responsive. It's very agile. Every bump in the road, it really does respond to, and you can feel it, and you know that the car is understanding what's there. It's not just going to roll over a bump and just pretend it's not there. It really does give that feedback back to the driver. Or should I say feedback to the driver. That's literally what it is, isn't it? So very nice in that sense. Right, this is where third gear is about to become best gear once again, because everything here can literally sit around in third gear all the way, I believe, as you can see, which I think is really nice. Just hold the gear and just focus on your lines. Just focus on your lines. That's really nice to do. This place is the one place that you need to be careful because of that downhill. As it goes downhill, you really can mess that up, and you want to be a little bit careful there. And of course, YouTube corner, which I think it has a real name now. I just do not know. And third gear even works kind of here, which is strange, but there you go. I think this is the only place where fourth gear might be needed for a short period of time, just here. Then, guess what? Back down to third before you do the little jump. Somehow I'm 3.8 seconds up on a lap. I cannot remember the exact lap time I would have got, so I'm not going to tell you that because I do not know. Of course, very soon you're going to see a lap time come up. So let's see if your guesses were correct for the lap. Of course, I might be able to improve just a little bit more, though I'll be honest, I actually doubt I'll be able to improve too much this time around. Seems to work a little bit better. I've been working on my line into that corner. I think Ace Pumpkin gave me a tip on what's the best way to go around that corner, and it's always been a bad corner for me. I remember going back to Gran Turismo 4. That's the first time I drove a car. First time I drove on the Nordschleife. I think the first car I drove on the Nordschleife was an Audi S4 from 1998. Yeah, I think that was the first car I drove on the Nordschleife. And that was in Gran Turismo 4. I've got a picture of it somewhere as well. It used to have that photo mode, brand new photo mode. You're like, oh, this is going to be fancy. So yeah, that was the first car I ever drove. That was good braking all the way down. It's telling me 8 minutes 22. Which is not what I was expecting. I was expecting a lot less than that. 8 minutes 20. So that's what we've got there now. I was expecting around 8 minutes 15, I'll be honest. And maybe 1 or 2 seconds of that is down to my my inability to drive as I would normally, but not all of it, that's for sure. So let's try again. Let's try and push a little bit more. Now that I'm, you know, the more I'm driving the car, the more I'm getting used to the car, the more I'm trying to understand where I can gain lap time out of a car like this. It's a really nice car when it comes to driving it. Maybe start using second a little bit more, not just the whole way through. Yeah, when you start driving a car like this, I think at the start with obviously no traction control, no ABS, none of that stuff, street tyres, you'll find that a car like this can be a little bit daunting to drive, just because it's, well, exactly for that reason. The back of the car just like stepping out a lot, so you can see I'm going to lose probably about 4/10 of a second in total as to what I would have gained. But once you start driving this more and more, you will start appreciating the style of the car, and you'll start appreciating what you can and cannot do with said car. And I think that's what's happening here. And I'm starting to understand exactly where I can and cannot push the car. And that's great. That's something that I think I find in BMWs. That's one of those traits of a BMW, a good BMW anyway, is that once you start driving it, every time you drive it, you just get a little bit more comfortable with what it can and cannot do, and you start using that and understanding what it can and cannot do, and using that to your advantage. Whereas some other cars, you might not be able to do that. You know, it takes a lot. Either it takes a lot longer, or you just do not feel that confidence in the car. In a BMW, you do feel that confidence. And I know I'm starting to sound like a BMW fanboy or something, so I'll tell you what, I'll say something anti-BMW. The new M3 and M4 look absolutely disgusting, in my opinion. It's just, it doesn't make any sense. The proportions are all wrong. The design is all wrong. I've heard from Chris Harris that the chassis design, or the way the suspension is and the way it works, is fantastic, but it looks terrible. It just looks absolutely terrible. And maybe BMW need to do something about that. Maybe the next generation will look far, far better, which would be very nice. That'd make a nice change from this generation anyway. The last generation looks good. Looks a little bit bland, I would say, the last generation. Whilst the I think the nicest generation was the what is it? E46? Was it the E46 generation? Now I'm trying to remember. I think it was the E46 generation. Around the early 2000s. It was also where the M5 I think looked the best as well, with its the V8 M5. I think that looks stunning too. So we've got ourselves 1.5 seconds up. I'm surprised. I mean, either I'm really bad at driving this car, or this car is just not as capable as I thought it was, or that RX-7 was incredible. That's one of the three. Okay, I roughly lost about half a second here. You do have to be careful, a lot more careful with this car than you would with other cars, that's for sure, because of things like that. You can see I managed to take a bit more speed into there than before, and then coming out of here I managed to get a little bit more speed there as well. And I'm going to try and hold a little bit more speed through this as well, without it having the rear end try and step out on me. I think with traction control, this car is very, very easy to drive. Traction control and ABS. Although, to be honest, I'm not really faring badly without the ABS at all. It's the traction control that I think would certainly help get a faster lap time, until you were an expert, or you had some fantastic sim gear that would tell you every little bit of what was going on. There you go. Okay, that wasn't as good as I wanted it to be. It's it's that corner twice I've now messed up, and I think I've lost a good half second through that. I genuinely think it's about half a second I've lost through that section. There we go. Easy does it. Trying to be as calm and collected as possible in a car that clearly does not want to be calm and collected and wants to just go around the corner sideways, because that's what it's sort of designed to do in a sense. Let's try second through here. Didn't really help. In fact, didn't help at all, because that gear shift didn't help us. This has worked though. Just easing off just a little bit really helped gain us a couple of tenths, which is what we're looking at here now. I mean, in this section, I believe I'm fighting in tenths, and if you get each tenth, if you improve by a tenth here, a tenth there, that all starts adding up through these corners. Yeah, a tenth in every corner adds up to, because there's so many corners, will add up to a couple of seconds, and that's exactly what I'm trying to do here. Go, come on, nice and gentle, there you go. See, that corner I messed up last time, so I've managed to ease that in. And that's even better through that corner. That's another 2 seconds down, but it is not going to be enough to beat the RX-7. It just isn't. And I do not think a third lap is going to be necessary here. It's just, this is what this car is capable of. That's interesting. That is certainly very interesting. Just trying to do as fast a gear change as possible, and of course, it all depends on me getting the braking right down this hill. If I get the braking wrong, I'm going to lose all of those 2 seconds, just like that. This is that easy to lose 2 seconds on this track, slowing down from high speed. So I've really got to be careful here. Lost 0.3 of a second, 0.4 of a second through all of that. 8:19.12. Alright, should I try a third lap? Obviously I'm already trying one whilst I'm thinking about trying a third lap, but is it worth giving it a go? For probably a second. It's not going to be enough for me to beat the RX-7, that's for sure. But you never know, I could suddenly, you know, get everything absolutely bang on and suddenly have the ability to get close to it. So there is maybe some reason for me to try this. I really like third gear in this car. It's just it's such a gentle gear compared to second. Third is it's far more gentle. It's just a very good gear. So just kept my foot in it there. Even though the car started stepping out, you keep your foot in it and see what happens. Obviously, the third lap, for those people watching who have watched other laps, is generally the lap where I tend to crash at some points, because I just push a little bit too hard, just trying to see if I can catch or gain any lap time anywhere. So I do tend to push just a little bit harder than maybe I should on the third lap, and that's why it can tend to go fairly wrong. On occasion, my third lap does come out really nice, so it's a hit and miss with the third lap, I think. There you go. So if I can improve on this section, then we might be able to go up to gaining a second. 0.7. No, it's not good. I mean, 0.7 of a second is 0.7 of a second, but across a lap of this size, it's no good. Makes no sense for 0.7 of a second through a lap of this kind of length. Although 1 second, now we're getting somewhere, particularly as we've still got we've still got a lot of the lap to go, and this was certainly not even the part of the lap where I was the worst, and I'm gaining time. As I said, third gear, really good. It just allows you to hold traction, which is really, really nice, I think. Oh dear. And then subsequently lose all traction because you went in too fast and understeered. There isn't much I do not like about this car aside from its styling. In terms of drivability, it's a really good car. I know it's a twin turbo, and some people say, well, twin turbo's not really exactly BMW, is it? It's not that pure BMW feel, but I don't know. I mean, I know nowadays all of the BMW engines are twin turbo. Back then, or turbocharged at the very least. I think they're all twin. Back then, this was new. I do not think they had turbos on the cars. It was all straight sixes, V8s, things like that. Naturally aspirated. That's the word I was looking for. And you know, they went and did this, and people just went, "What on earth? Why have you done that?" Ooh, that was close. But I think it works. It does work. No. That was horrible. That's probably 0.7 of a second lost right there. Shameful. And probably lost another 0.4 or 5 of a second there. Okay, well, we've got some time to make up. As you can see, this is what happens when you push a little too hard. But here we go. This is the area of third gear. Let's try and get this correct this time. Third time's lucky for the third gear area. Includes carrying as much speed as we can through these corners where I know I can carry speed and I wasn't carrying speed before. Come on. So you do have to be careful around that corner. And you can understand why lots of people crash there, and obviously crash on this corner too. Right, third gear. Hold the third. There we go. I'm not going to use second this time. And there you go, you can see that actually did help. I think because holding third has helped there because we didn't have to change the gear, and so you didn't have that drop off. And obviously being a manual gearbox, you don't have that instant change, so you had to sort of, in a sense, wait it out. And it's milliseconds really, but you do feel it. You do feel those milliseconds. Oh, that was poor. That was slow. Let's try and stay around the outside of this. What happens? You just lose time. Okay, fine. I was wondering if you stay around the outside of that mini carousel section, will it respond better because you've just got more grip? Because it's that inside line just does not have the grip that you want it to have. It's only going to be a second faster. I could probably get 2 seconds out of it, but that's about it. This car's just not capable of it. Weird. I was expecting more. I was definitely expecting more. Well, I guess that's going to slot it very nicely into, what would it be? I think 5th place. Oh dear. Oh dear. Okay, that was close. Did not hit the brakes quite as quickly as I wanted to, and that happened. 1:17.85. There you go. That is the time. So that will go up on screen right about now. And there you have it. That has slots. That has the car slotted in very nicely into 6th place, behind the Mazda RX-7, the FD3S, and ahead of the Nissan Skyline R34. It's a respectable lap time, but I'll be honest, I was expecting around the 15s, so it's 3 seconds off what I was expecting. So there we go. Now, in terms of drivability, where would I place this car? Now, it's clearly in the top 10. That much is for sure. Now, last week I think the Dodge Viper made it into 8th place. We have the M3 Evo 3 in 2nd place. And this, I've got a feeling this is going to, and as I've mentioned before, between 2nd place and 5th place is very, very close. In fact, between 1st place and 5th place is very close. All of them are incredibly close in terms of my thoughts. For example, if I currently say that the Skyline is the 100, then the M3 is the 99, and the Exige is the 98, and the M4 is the 97. So really, you're looking within a couple of percent of each other. It's not like a massive gap at all. Even then, it could even be half a percent or half a point. I like the way this car drives. I like the style of this car. It just feels like a very raw BMW M car. In that sense, I think it feels better than an M4. And the M4 felt really nice, so it's definitely going ahead of the M4. So that leaves it with the Exige, the M3 Evo 3, that's the E30, and the Skyline. Now the Skyline I really, really liked, and I think it was just an amazing car to drive. And similarly, I think with the M3, it was the ultimate driving machine. This car is very much like that M3. It's small, it's nimble, it's agile. It gets through gaps. It turns in on a dime. I think that's the saying in America, right? Basically, it can turn on a penny or a ten. What's the saying in Britain for that? Because obviously we don't have a dime. I'm not sure. Anyway, it can just turn. It just turns. It's so easy. It has a good amount of power. It has a really nice capabilities. The one thing I would say that lets it down is how it looks. I think how it looks definitely lets the car down. It just doesn't look anywhere near as nice as an M3. And I guess in terms of drivability, are we talking about things like the sounds, how comfortable we feel inside? Because that is something that was taken into account on the Miura, was the power delivery and just how the engine sounded, because the sounds actually do make part of your driving. If you have a car that sounds good, it's nicer to drive. It just feels nicer. You've got a better feel of it as well, because you can hear the rev range, you can hear the little blips, you can hear any skips or anything like that. So there is that to be said. And this thing does definitely sound good. The 6-cylinder inline-6, that sounds very nice. So having said all of that, and you know, debating for a while, I think I'm going to place this for now ahead of the ECGadget. I'm going to place it in 3rd place, and I will be taking the ECGadget out again. But there you go, on screen right now you should see that's in 3rd place, just behind the original M3. And that's quite a spot for a car like this. It really does have that feel. The only thing I'd say is that the M3 just felt a tiny little bit more driver focused, in my opinion. I think because it was just a bit more raw than this car. This car it's more raw than an M4, but it's not quite as raw as that M3 was. So there you go. Thank you very much for watching. Please remember to hit the like button if you like this video, subscribe to the channel for more videos on Assetto Corsa. Leave a comment in the comments box below letting me know what you think. For the person who suggested or requested the BMW 1M, hopefully you enjoyed this particular video. Let me know, and let me know if your time suggestion was correct. If you can do so, please do consider supporting me on Patreon at www.patreon.com/ECGadget. Your support would be massively appreciated. This is not just to the one person who requested the 1M video, but this is to everybody watching this video. Your support would be massively appreciated. It would really help me out. At the moment I'm trying to save up for a new steering wheel, as this G27 is starting to play up after, what, 10 years? I think I've had it for about 10 years. And lastly, you can find me on social media at ECGadget LP for both Twitter and Instagram. That is all from me, and I will see you next time in the Nordschleife challenge for Assetto Corsa. And who knows what car I will try next. There's so many on the list, so many requests. I just need to try and figure out which one is going to be the next one.